us this premium right here. As you can see, this is just insurance, okay, so far. In return, if a default happened, Citi would surrender the Spanish bonds to JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs, whoever the counterparty is, who would then get to keep any salvage value, okay? So if there's a default, JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs make Citibank whole right off the bat, okay? It's insurance. In exchange for that, plus the premium, Citibank gives the remnants of the bonds back to JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, and they get to keep the salvage value. So that is the swap aspect. That's the swap aspect of the credit default swap. That's all it really is. Okay, for any of you out there here in the room or on YouTube who know what a put option is. Yeah, this is just basically a kind of a glorified put option, isn't it? That's all it is. JP Morgan Goldman Sachs is writing insurance policies on sovereign debt. Credit default swaps are glorified proxy put options, in this case on entire nations. Now stop. You have investment banks writing put options on entire nations. Stop and sit in stillness with that for a second. Are we seeing a problem with this? On entire nations. How in the world is JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs going to pay out on something like this? How in the world are they going to pay out? How does JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs protect itself? Well, number one, by bribing the International Swaps and Derivatives Association, ISDA, to never declare a default. This has already happened once. Greece defaulted. I mean, it totally failed. It was a total default. ISDA said, no, there was some salvage value there, so it wasn't a default. Nobody has to pay out on anything. Well, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. Credit default swaps have as built into even their name the notion that, yeah, even in the event of a default, there will be salvage. The salvage is built into the paradigm. So arguing, well, if there's still some salvage left over, then it's not a default, that makes no sense. This is the ISDA just acting as the bribed proxy for JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs. Never ever declare a legal default no matter what happens, so that these two firms never ever have to pay out. So all they do is they receive premiums, and they know that they will never have to pay out. The other way is by JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs sending its employees and agents into the governments and central banks to provide bailouts. Look at the list of people who are running the Federal Reserve, the United States Treasury, on and on, the European Central Bank, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. Look at the roster of these people and then look at their immediate past employment history. These outfits, these banks, these governments, they are populated by people coming straight out of JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs especially, and a handful of these other mega banks. Why in the world would Tim Geithner leave Goldman Sachs and, multi-million-dollar pay package? Why would he leave that and go to a $170,000 a year position in the federal government? Why would he do that? Because they are sent into the government with the knowledge and understanding that they will be heavily compensated after X number of years when they come out of the government, and after they have rooted all of this government money and largesse into the coffers of the banks that they are essentially working for. I'm not a big-time conspiracy theorist. You're not going to hear me talking about Rothschilds and all that kind of crap, because what I think all of that is deflecting personal responsibility. We're all responsible for this, don't get me wrong. However, it is an absolute metaphysical certitude that these banks are intentionally populating these government agencies and bureaucracies with their own people in order to funnel the money back to them. That cannot be argued. I mean, that doesn't even fall into the domain of conspiracy because there's not even anything secret about it. All you have to do is look at the list of people, okay? Now, page 15, let's talk about repurchase agreements, repos. Another thing has a crazy complex name, repos, reverse repos. Oh my gosh, what's all this? It's actually very simple, and you need to understand it because this is one of the most common financial transactions going on in the economy today, and nobody has any idea about any of it. Okay, number one, MF Global. Let's put this in the simplified context of MF Global and John Corzine, and in very simplistic terms, try to kind of rebuild what he did so that you can understand repos. MF Global buys Italian debt at a discount from Spain. Now, okay, we've got three entities here. We've got the private entity MF Global, we've got Italy, and we've got Spain. Now, wait a minute. Spain is broke. Why does Spain have Italian debt? Oh, that's right, I forgot to tell you, because Europe is this massive cannibal situation where all of these countries are just broke, but they're buying each other's debt. And so it's all cross-collateralized. It's an absolute disaster. But yes, this is exactly what's going on. MF Global buys Italian debt at a discount from Spain. Why? Because Spain needs the cash now to stop bank runs and keep welfare flowing. Okay? So Spain needs cash. So we've got some Italian paper, okay, or MF Global. Here you go. We're going to sell it to you, and we're going to sell it to you at a discount. Yes, Europe is a massive incestuous scam of broke nations buying each other's worthless junk bonds with money printed by the European Central Bank. That's exactly correct. That's the entire situation. Spain agrees up front, right up front, to buy back, repurchase, hence repurchase agreement. It's Italian bonds at full price from MF Global at a fixed date in the future. So let's look at it from MF Global's perspective. They are buying the Italian paper from Spain at a discount, and immediately Spain says, I will commit to you via a forward contract to buy it back 6 months from now, a year from now, whatever the term is, to buy it back from you at full price. So MF Global has both legs of the transaction. They've got the actual buy now in real time at a discount, so buy low, right? They also have the forward sell contract at full price, so sell high. Buy low, sell high. They've got both of the legs locked in. Okay? So what Spain is doing is called a repo, a repurchase agreement, because Spain is the one who's repurchasing. Reverse repo is not crazy difficult. All a reverse repo is it's the other side. MF Global, what they're doing is a reverse repo. So don't think that reverse repo is some completely different, extra complicated situation. No, it's just the other side of the coin. So Spain is doing a repo, MF Global has done a reverse repo because they're on the other side. What repurchase agreements are, and I have to credit Warren Pollack on this because this is his analogy and it's very, very good. Repos are basically like a parking garage, okay? So MF Global has rented a bunch of spaces in a parking garage, and people bring their cars to this parking garage. They park their car in one of MF Global's slots and pay MF Global to park it there. MF Global gets to use the car while it's parked in the spot and agrees that, yes, a year from today you can come back and I will have the car gassed up and washed and polished and completely maintained and ready to go, and you can have it right back. But while your car is parked in my slot in the parking garage, I get to use it. And you pay me. Okay? That is basically what repos are. I like that in terms of a parking garage. It makes a lot of sense. A parking garage for money. So now MF Global is holding the Italian bonds in one of its garage stalls. MF Global has given Spain cash equal to the value of the Italian bonds minus a discount. Okay, that was the buy low minus the discount, and then there's the sell high that's already locked in on a forward contract. At the same moment, MF Global records on its books the agreed upon forward sale. So it books the forward sale immediately back to Spain. Thus, MF Global has the low buy and the higher sell on its books, and here's the punchline, recognizes it immediately as profit. Okay? But, so they've got the profit booked, but they get to hold it what's called off balance sheet. Have you heard that term, off balance sheet? That's what we're talking about here. Since the buy and the sell cancel each other out, GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, allows MF Global to carry this reverse repo off balance sheet, thus allowing for massive, massive leverage. They can just keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. Recognize the profit immediately, hold the actual transaction off balance sheet so that according to GAAP, it doesn't count against your firm equity. We're seeing a problem? This is a disaster. What happens if the rent on the garage space goes up? Okay, they've got all these cars parked in these garage spaces. They're actually renting the garage space from somebody else. So this is a subleasing situation. What happens if all of a sudden the rent goes up? Well, MF Global must post a small amount of money for each garage stall it needs. If the rent rates suddenly double due to increased risk, meaning in real world terms, Italian bond rates increase, it must immediately post the funds. But since they've been holding all this off balance sheet and they're levered up 20, 30, 40 times, if the rent goes up, it's going to wipe out all of their cash. And when I talk about the rent going up, what am I really talking about in real world terms? I'm talking about the interest rate on Italian bonds going up. That's what I'm talking about. MF Global would then have to post more collateral to secure that position. For those of you in the financial industry, it's margin. Okay, you can call it a margin call, you can call it a collateral call. It's basically the same thing. Since MF Global has been legally permitted and encouraged to hold its reverse repos off balance sheet and is thus carrying, let's call it 35 times more reverse repos than cash, the increased rent rate, the higher Italian bond rate, will wipe out the entire company and its customer asset base. That's what happened. Corzine put all of these repos on with European junk paper, and he's psychotic. The man is a psychopath. Okay? His brain does not work right. He does not have any sort of feelings of guilt or any triggers regarding honesty or safety or risk-taking with other people's money. So he just levered that company up through the roof. I think 35 times is probably being conservative in terms of the leverage of what he was doing. As soon as Europe got twitchy in the late summer and fall of 2011, and those Italian bond rates started inching up, he got a collateral call, and he didn't have the cash to pay for it. And so what he did was he swept all of the customer money out of their accounts, out of their brokerage accounts, took that money and used it to pay his collateral call on his Italian reverse repo position. And he walks the streets a free man. And the latest word from the Wall Street Journal is that he's frustrated. That he's not able to get back into the financial markets. And this is slowing down his career. He's frustrated. He should be tried, he should be arrested, he should be tried, and upon conviction, he should be executed sunrise the next morning. And I'm merciful when it comes to execution, so I'm a big fan of firing squad. If I was going to be executed, I want to be executed by a firing squad. So yeah, put the son of a bitch against a wall and shoot him with high-powered rifles until he's dead. Then he won't have to be frustrated anymore. But wait, it gets so much worse. MF Global, upon receiving the Italian bonds, what do? Now they're holding these Italian bonds, right? They turn around and they borrow money from the Federal Reserve at 0% using the Italian paper as collateral to fund what? More reverse repos. This is how you get spooled up to 35 times leverage or more. Take the collateral that you've received and then go borrow funds against that, posting the collateral as collateral. Oh, what? If any of us tried to do this, we'd go to prison for the rest of our lives. And yet, this is what the entire financial system is now pretty much built on. And don't forget, MF Global also buys credit default swaps on Italian bonds from JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs for the term while they're holding the Italian paper. Sure, I mean, you've got a 6% spread. He had MF Global as a broker-dealer, which meant that he could go to the discount window at the Federal Reserve and borrow at 0%. So he goes and borrows from the Fed at 0. Let's say the Italian rate is, the Italian repo rate is, I don't know, 4%. He pays 100 basis points in CDS. I'm just making these numbers up. He still is making, 3-4% when he can borrow money at the discount window at 0. You see this? It's sick. It's sick that this is happening. Why are they doing this? These are all fairly new developments, these repos and these CDS and so forth. These are fairly new developments. Exotic, risky schemes like these are a recent innovation encouraged by the government. How? Zero interest rate policy. I started my little teeny tiny commodity brokerage in 2006. At that time, the paradigm for all companies, all of these brokerage houses was that the customer funds were invested in nothing any more risky than 90-day T-bills. 90-day T-bills. That was as risky as you could get. And when I started, the 90-day T-bill rate was roughly around 5%. And so, the brokerage firm was splitting that usually with the broker. I declined that and I asked the 50% to go to my clients. I asked, would you please pay my clients interest on that? So my clients were actually getting about 2.5% interest on their free cash balances with me. I was one of the only commodity brokers in the entire nation who paid, as a matter of course, interest on customer balances. Because, believe it or not, interesting thing that I learned, I didn't realize this before I started, brokerage companies weren't making the bulk of their profit off of commissions. They weren't making their money off of commissions. They were making a lot of their money off of interest income off of the customer segregated funds, which they were only investing in U.S. Treasury paper, which was at the time as close to perfectly safe and zero risk as you could get. So that was fine. That paradigm worked. As soon as you have the government put in place ZIRP, zero interest rate policies, all these brokerage houses now and all of these other entities that we'll get into have lost their main source of income. It's gone. And so why did they start doing all these repos and all this stuff? Because they were desperately looking for a way to replace the lost interest income from ZIRP. Okay? So the government has made this bed. Let's, on page 17, we're going to go through a short history of 90-day T-bill rates in the United States. Fill in this little matrix on page 17. First box on the left, January 2007. On the right in the box, that 90-day T-bill rates were 5.11%. January of 07, 90-day T-bill rates were 5.11%. July of 07, they were 4.96%. January of 08, 2.82%. July of 2008, 1.66%. January of 2009, here's Obama, 0.13%. January of 2010, 0.06%. It's basically zero. January of 2011, 0.15%. Oops. And January of 2012, 0.03%.